I was always in warehousing, in logistics, in shipping. I was trained by Maersk in the early days. I left IMD 2001, got a job in records management, which is like service storage. So it's kind of related, but not the same. So it's always been space utilization things. And then I got an opportunity to work for a self-storage construction firm that built the small little rooms, the partition units. It was an Australian outfit, 2 entrepreneurs, they fell out. One was bought out and I took the job, and a private equity came in, and I got to run it in Asia. And then they separately built a self-storage brand platform called Extra Space in Singapore. So that became like an in-house customer, if you will. So that's how it happened. And I did that for a few years, and then I needed to do it myself. You haven't met Kevin. Anybody who meets Kevin will say there's a true Hong Kong style entrepreneur. And a lot of people will know exactly what I mean by that. I mean, I've been in Asia many years. I've been in Singapore. It's a good business environment, but it's not an entrepreneurial, center. It's just ingrained in the whole setup of Hong Kong. He is archetypical of that. Kevin left university with $1 million in the bank, basically selling his homework to real companies. That's the kind of guy he is. So he got introduced to self-storage by his dad and his uncle. They have a workshop in Guangzhou, which is like an ironmongery, knock some pieces of metal together kind of thing. There was an American self-storage business that got in touch with them and said, we need some swing doors for a self-storage business in America. Can you help build those? They sent some drawings, they looked at it and go, yeah, we can do that, good. Produce them, put it in a container, send it off to America. Then Kevin gets wind of that. He's fresh out of university, this is 2002. He says, that could work in Hong Kong probably. So they produce a makeshift storage unit, drive into a square in Hong Kong, Causeway Bay, put it down, ask people walking past, if we build this in your neighborhood, what do you think? Would you use that? And how much would you pay? And there was great feedback to that. So he takes his $1 million that he's just made and goes out and buys property in Hong Kong. Now Hong Kong is a vertical market. Everything is compressed, everything is tall. So a warehouse in Hong Kong is typically a 25-story building that is strata title. So you buy 1 floor at a time. So he goes out and buys 1 floor there, 1 floor there, 1 floor there. Now 2002, what goes on in the world? We've just had 9/11. We have a general recession, and in Hong Kong we got SARS. So property is dirt cheap. So he picks up 3 locations, homemade software, and because it's what he does, computer scientist, and homemade partitions, and off he goes. He was you just couldn't keep him down, and I saw him doing that, and I got the job selling these partitions, or building, manufacturing these partition systems, and I got in touch with him and say, you got to be my customer. And he said, Jes, my family, we have our own factory in China. I'm not going to buy it with you, go away. But we got on really well. So it wasn't like go away. We got on really well. And we always said, okay, we got to find a way of working together. But this wasn't it. Then one day I had the entrepreneurial sort of itch that needed to be scratched. I saw an opportunity in the market, and I thought, okay, I had many customers, and I was telling them, why don't you do it this way? Why don't you do it that way? And they didn't want to do it. So, as happens for many entrepreneurs, well, to hell with it, I've got to do it myself then. And that's how it happened. A lot of similarities. It's very congested. It's a wealthy place. It's a developed place. So a lot of those things are similar to Hong Kong, but the culture is very different. So, and that's important for when you come with a brand that is tested in another market. You got to find out, okay, what can I use? What can't I use? So when Kevin and I decided to do it together, it was my business, and he was then supporting it in a financial term. And he said, well, we'll use my brand. I said, yeah, we'll use your brand, but we'll change everything. So we changed everything. We kept the name, but everything changed. So the core of that is, how is Hong Kong different? You go to Hong Kong, marketing-wise, is very much it's a street corner shouting approach, right? You put a box down and you yell at people, say, and then you got the Cantonese language, which is very shouty Chinese, versus Mandarin, which is much softer. It's a bit like French and English, to be honest. But it's quite different that way, right? So if you try and take that and put that to Singapore, never going to work. So we changed everything about that. But the back end was to a large extent the same. So the partitions were the same, different room sizes. The system was the same, but we had to change it into English. We changed a lot with that. So there are many similarities, but I think I'm not the only one who's done business in Hong Kong and Singapore and who will find out that, hang on, many similarities and many differences too. He became a partner, so he put money into it too. And he said, but I don't want to invest into I don't want to finance your business. You got to put money into it too. And I said, of course, it's my business. What am I going to do, right? But to be honest, for me, it was a matter of, once you decide you want to go down the entrepreneurial route, you got to say, okay, how am I going to do this? Who can help me here? Because it is lonely. And very early that became apparent to me. And I thought, well, I've supplied to this industry for a while now, and I know everybody, I know what they do, I know the bloody room sizes, I know all the software, I know the marketing approach, and I know many of the customers, but I still never ran it, right? You can be a good football player, but that doesn't mean make you a good coach, right? You gotta learn how to do that side of things. So I went to him and said, let's partner up. I want your help, my business, your help. And that became the relationship. So his brand, which became my brand, so now it's our brand. And then we have this unique relationship where we're obviously massively different people. We look different, we think different. We've had different history, but we're a true case of 1 + 1 is more than 2. And we're still partners. So we're doing the next venture now after StoreFriendly, because we just can't help ourselves. We have to do it together again. Entrepreneurship doesn't just mean, being alone. Entrepreneurship means to me, you build a business and you make use of the right opportunity and get the right sort of armory, the right weaponry in place. And a partner in that case is very often a good thing to do. It certainly has been for me. Kevin had done franchising in Hong Kong, and I had never done anything with franchise. I had no concept of how that would work, and I wasn't initially attracted to it. The thing with franchisees is you got to build a business and you got to have people help you do it. So either you go out and raise money from various sources, friends, families, venture capital, whatever it is, or you borrow money, or you get some others to invest into it while you retain control. And the good thing about the franchising angle is the brand, the operating model, the execution was totally owned by me. No input from anybody else, Kevin and I, right? But the franchisees would help finance the expansion of that, right? And that is, it's a bit, I always compare it to, it's a bit like having a family, In the end, when we sold, we had 8 franchisees, 9 branches, 8 franchisees. It's a bit like having 8 children, You depend on them and they're great, they're terrific, but they're also bloody annoying. They also come and ask for things all the time, and can we do this and can we do that? And before I started, I had some concerns as to the expansion and so you ask, how did it kick off? Well, you got to do the first one yourself. You got to do a proof of concept. I tried initially and say, well, here it's going to be perfect. You go out looking for franchisees. A lot of people, to be honest, were interested. And I talked a good game, and I had good numbers and a good model and good sites that they could take. And they're all sitting there going, yeah, yeah, but nobody wants to be number one, right? So it became apparent that I have to do the first one myself. So I did that. And that, then it took like 2-3 months where all these people that were sitting on the sidelines, they saw this is working. This is working really well. There are customers coming in, knocking on the door. They could check the numbers, or I would share the numbers with them. So it worked. You just have to do that. You know, I usually say it's like, you know, how are you going to sell a McDonald's franchise if you can't taste the burger? You know, it's got to be there. Somebody's got to do it first. And once they have the look and feel and they see this is what you mean. Well, they were all saying like, well, you talk a good game, but you know, you got to open up and see this is what it is. And then they got to see the customers walking in and how they interact with it, how you sell it, how does it actually work. And then within 3 months I had 4, right? And it was, and then you get also, listen, as a franchisor, you're selling a concept, you're a salesperson. And it's somehow easier to sell something once the first one has signed, right? Once you can actually look somebody in the mirror or in the face and say, well, you're not the first anymore. You know, it just becomes a lot easier after that. Professionals. They were doctors, lawyers, bankers, accountants, a couple of entrepreneurs. Some people had a building. There's some regulatory issues in Singapore where you needed to occupy a certain percentage of space until you can only rent out 30%. The rest you need to occupy. Say your business doesn't do so well, so you got empty space, you got nothing to use it for. Then I would go to them and say, I'll use the space, but you are the user, but you use it with my brand, my concept. And that worked very well. So the regulatory environment sort of played into my hands. But I knew that. I could see it coming, so I thought, hang on, boom, this works very well. So I had 2 of those. That became an issue then in selling the business, because when we sold, it was as a self-operated business. So I had to buy out all the franchisees. But one of those had fallen out and had moved over to somewhere else, so it wasn't an issue anymore. And the other one, we had to sell as a franchisee because they couldn't sell. Because if they sold, they were contravening the rules for their own building. First, I would explain the concept and the setup. So I would find the location first of all and say, this is what we're looking for. So look at my own, look at that one, look at that. We're going to find something like that. And they go, how do we do that? I go, we don't, I do. And I show you. Then I would find it. So I had agents who were out scouting for me, and they all knew what I was looking for after a while. So every time they found something, then it became a sort of a matching session, right? Do I have the franchisee and the real estate at the same time, right? Sometimes you have, but not this one, and the other way around. Real estate is the most important thing. Once you have that, then it became, so you need staff, you need the fit out, the setup, all of that I would supply. So it came from our factory up in China. And then I had a contractor who knew exactly what I needed in terms of access control, in terms of lights, floor works, everything. So it was like a slick sort of rollout. 3 months, we're up and running, right? So we can go find the property, sign a tenancy, sign a lease, 3 months rent-free, and on the first day it's open, it's ready. By the time you need to pay rent, the business is ready. And then you get into the issues of cash flow, and that's where self-storage is a unique business, because self-storage is high margins and great cash flow because everything is prepaid, right? So those are 2 things that don't often come together, and that's why self-storage is so unique. So the model was, we go out and say we take 8,000 square feet, 800 square meters approximately, right? In Singapore, you pay $1.50 in rent, so you pay $12,000 in rent. The income that we would get is approximately grow the business 1 unit a day. So the measure I always use, you sell 1 unit a day. But then they would pay for 6 months. So for 1 unit, you get 6 months cash. You rent 30 a month, that's actually 6 months cash, operating cash you have sitting in just 1 month, right? So you're break even already in month 1. You're actually profitable in cash terms already from month 1. And that is important because it's an investment proposal for individuals. It's less a business. Okay, so you go out and sell it. If you go out and sell an investment proposal to people and say, yeah, but next month you got to finance a little bit extra, you know, the working capital thing, they go, hang on, I'm not interested anymore. So if you can give them a model whereby the cash is, it's done, you know, you invest on average about 300,000 Singapore dollars for one branch, and they would get 25,000 in every month. Their cost would be about 16, 18. So they get positive cash flow of about 7,000 every month. And then by the time after 6 months of the first customers that cash had run out, right? Because now, well, then you're still renting out. You're still renting out new rooms. And now the first one's coming on, and then you do those monthly. So it becomes this big cash mountain that's just rolling in front, right? By the time you have occupancy of about 90%, which was fairly easy because remember we did small branches. 90% you're operating at 50% margin, 6 months paid in advance. Where do you find such a business, all right? So they loved that. They loved that. The model was, you have 1 employee. Say, Benoit, it's your branch, you have 1 staff. On your payroll, you pay the electricity, you pay for all that stuff. You have 1 staff. If that staff is sick or is on holiday or something, I have a floater. I give you a floater. But you pay for that. So I would always say you have 1.2 staff, right? So they have 1 fixed staff, and then I would have a floater. And I would have, it could be my accountant, my finance guy. He could sit and work anywhere, right? And he would also be a fairly good salesman. So he would just put himself in a branch, in that branch, and then tomorrow that branch, and blah, blah, blah. My operations manager, same. Sometimes, once in a blue moon, when everybody went on holiday, I would do it myself, right? Which was actually also good, right? You get to the front line, right? And I would, you know, I'd actually love that. Then I got to sell, which was fun. I had 8 franchisees in 9 branches. So 1 franchisee had 2 branches. And the funny thing was that as you say, the balance of power starts to shift because they say, well, we're investing into your brand, so it becomes kind of my brand, or at least a proportional ownership of it. You go, you know, no, it doesn't, it's still my brand. But so you have a little bit of give and take. But listen, I appreciate the franchisees for what they do, for believing in my business, my concept. And you got to treat them nicely. But you got to retain control of it. So you have, the franchisor needs to grow in front of the franchisees. And that was a bit of a learning to me because I thought maybe they're going to see, why are you competing with my business? Here's my branch, Jes is opening his over there. You know, is he going to send all the customers over there? So you've got to be very upfront and very fair to that. But, and I thought they would take that as a competition, but actually they say, well, if you're willing to invest into it, that's great to see. So then I am too. So you have to kind of spearhead the whole expansion of the brand. That was an interesting learning, I thought. Effectively, it's a little bit like 7-Eleven against Carrefour, or a big supermarket, Tesco's, whatever, right? That you can only put so many Carrefours in a certain market, but you can put a hell of a lot of 7-Elevens, like a lot. And my model was always, I was afraid to go out and take real estate, like big place. Real estate in Asia is expensive plus, right? And I never wanted to do that. I wanted to get the customer, get the cash in and control the business, the operations. And then when I have that, I can make the franchisee an offer, buy them out, and now move them into a piece of real estate. And that's kind of what I wanted to do. I didn't want to buy real estate and now I've got to fill it because it's too difficult. So I thought I got to come up with a model whereby I can expand my business without risk and without cash. So the risk was low because it sat with the franchisee and the cash came from the franchisees. Boom, right? Then my margin, of course, was less because if you own the branch yourself, your margin is 50%. If as a franchisor, you get the 15% royalty plus the franchise fees up front. But you know, you go from 15% to or from 50% to only 15%. But the advantage is you don't need to finance the expansion, and you can roll it out really quickly. Now, what we did was our branches were small. So about 200 customers, 300 customers max per branch. We had 2,000 customers plus when we sold. And the biggest operator at that stage had about 6,000. But they'd taken 10 years. So in 2.5 years, we took 2,000. So we did well in terms of market appeal because convenience is such a massive thing in self-storage. So we just did a unique product in your neighborhood, across the street from where you live. And then we gambled on aircon and small rooms and faster service and higher prices. And we said, it's just so good that you're going to use it anyway. And they did. This was an interesting story because it did become, like when I set up, when I decided I wanted to do it, the others in the market didn't want to listen to that kind of concept. So I had pitched it to them before. They didn't want to listen. They didn't want my partition systems that way and my ideas, business ideas. They were like, just give us our steel and we'll do the rest. So I did it myself, and I caught them unawares. So when we opened up and we quickly got new franchisees and opened up many branches, it was, you know, it was great. The first year was intoxicating, to be honest. It was a bit stressful even because it was too fast, but it was such a wave, it was such a rush. And then they kind of woke up, right? Which unfortunately it happens, right? But so after 2.5 years, it did become a little bit more difficult. But we had our own. We'd done well. We had our presence. We had a strong brand. I'd spent a hell of a lot of marketing money, which you have as a franchisor. But I had massive payback on that. And then it sort of stagnated a little bit. They changed some rules in the housing market. So we're now talking late 13, 2014, they were tightening up on the housing market, which means people started moving less. And that had an impact on self-storage. Not so much my product, because my product was to pitch as an extension to your home. It's a small room, air conditioned, get you in there, you stay forever. The bigger rooms, the non-air conditions, are more for the people when they move house or renovate their house. So it's a temporary storage play. Mine was longer. But if the competition gets less, they start looking at my area. So there was some things. So I could see this is tightening up. And then frankly, they made the offer so sweet that at the end I couldn't say no. What happened was that they came to me and said, we want to buy your business. And I said, that's nice, but it's not for sale. And then they came back a month later. So this was, her name is Helen Ung, who is the CEO of SingPost self-storage business. And I knew her because we were both on the board in the Asian Self-Storage Association. We were both founding members. So we were competitors, but we knew each other very well. Anyway, she said, I've been tasked with growing the business. I want to buy your business. So I said, yeah, that's great, but it's not for sale. And then she came and said, well, really, I really want to buy it, you know. I mean, well, okay, and I want to buy it as a self-operated business. I said, but I don't own everything. And I got franchisees, I got partners involved. I'm not going to go and stir up shit, excuse my French, but I'm not going to go and stir up drama with all my franchisees. And then you say, oh, no, I'm not going to buy it anyway. So, you know. But then she went away and came back again and said, okay, well, here's some numbers. You need to give me this, but we're talking multiples of that. We're talking there. So then I put my MBA brain to use and sort of go, okay, if we're doing that becomes that. Okay, let's talk, right? So now I could see, well, they were very serious, and it became financially very attractive. And I had the operating constraints in the market at that stage. Then it became a matter of when I said, well, you need to break it down. I got 12 branches. What are you going to pay for each? So that I have a feeling of what does it take to, if I get a franchisee in for 300,000, that's their investment, and I go and you buy that branch for $1 million, then I can maybe find a deal in between. So I give the franchisee $500,000 and I get $500,000, something like that, right? Those are not the actual numbers, but they're influenced by the right numbers, okay? Then it became an issue for me to go and talk to the franchisee. And this, again, showed up to be a bit of a power play between the franchisor and the franchisee, because if the franchisor comes and says to the franchisee, I'm going to sell out, then each and every franchisee would go, whoa, what's going on? Is it time to get out? And that, it became a kind of a power play. But for me, at the end, I bought out all of them and they all made money. They didn't all make a lot of money, but they all made money. And they all said, next time, give us a call when you're ready with your next one. And that was important to me. SyncPost came to me in November. Then I think we signed a term sheet with them in January, sort of mid-January. And then we had, so then it became like late February was Chinese New Year, and it was after Chinese New Year that I negotiated with them, and it was, basically I just lined them up. Said, I'll see you today, you do. So the negotiations were fairly fast, to be honest, maybe 2 weeks the whole thing took. And then it became a matter of you know, and how do we execute this? Because there's a lot of practical things to do in that connection. SyncPost, so the interesting thing in the whole setup was they came to me and said, we want to buy your business, Singapore business. Okay, good. Then after a while they said, we also want your Hong Kong business. And we said, well, that's not for sale. I mean, Singapore is not for sale, but now, okay, but Hong Kong definitely not for sale. Well, they really want it. And then it became like in the end, they said, then we won't buy Singapore. And it was kind of like a to and from kind of situation. The final outcome was that we said, you buy Singapore and you get an exclusivity for Hong Kong for 6 months on these terms, and they agreed to that. They bought the business finally it was transferred in September 2015. So we got paid that day. Then after so I then signed, as part of that, I signed an employment contract with them. So I had an earn out for a year because some of the branches were less full. So there would be more money in it for me if I went out and filled them up at a certain profit level. What happened was in September, October, I think it was in October, then SyncPost has issues. They bought a logistics company in New Zealand, and it was one of the SyncPost directors who was a majority shareholder in that business, and that was notified to the stock exchange, and then they got a big rap. And then they said, okay, we'll appoint our auditor to go and look at it, and then they said, the stock exchange was a bit, I remember it was in the paper, and they said, that's like asking your mother for a reference. That's not good enough. You need to go out and ask somebody else, right? And they did that. And what happened was they got a massive rap, and they were really told or put in the naughty corner. And in that period, of course, they couldn't go out and buy our Hong Kong business. So that thing was shelved. What happened, though, was that Kevin and I had whetted our appetite because the whole transactional thing, it's great to start a business, it's fun to build a business, it's exhilarating to get partners involved, but nothing compares to selling your business. It's a massive rush. It really, really is. Because it's just so that somebody comes in and says, your business, the way you do business, that's what we want. It's really a cool experience, really, really very nice. So we thought, what do we do here? How do we get involved in this? Now I have a small shareholding in the Hong Kong business, but it's basically Kevin's business still. But we sort of like, okay, how do we continue on with this thing. And then we had, so my original exit was to have the customers and then go and buy the real estate and move the customers in. That same thing we could still do in Hong Kong. Then that sort of triggered our thinking in Hong Kong. How do we do that? Hong Kong is a different market though, because it's super expensive. It's 4 times more expensive than Singapore. And it's just, the real estate is really complicated to get at. But the potential, the value add that we could do by buying an industrial building, replacing the tenant with one that pays 4 times more, our own self-storage customer, and then put that back on the market at a similar cap rate, where you're basically 3.5, 4 times the investment. And because the amounts are so big, there's some serious money to be made. What happened was first Singpost fell away because of their boardroom drama. Then we had other people. Once we started conceptualizing, we have the thing, we have the golden egg, right? We have what will trigger a massive value-adding opportunity to the most expensive real estate in the world, in Hong Kong, right? Then the capital houses of the world, they were very interested. So they came knocking on the door, right? The KKRs, the Blackstones, the people like that. They were, wow, hello, that's really cool. And that was nice. It's good to, you know, to go through that exercise of them sort of looking at your business. And so we tangoed with them for a while. What happened then in Hong Kong in June 2016, so there was another self-storage operator called SC Storage. They had a fire in one of their setups, and it was a big fire, and it was a PR nightmare. So what happened was, I think it was 108 hours, if I remember correctly, of fire. Every night on TV, picture of a building on fire. Every bloody night. PR disaster for the whole industry. 2 firefighters died. And it just highlighted a complete and total and utter lack of regulation and control in Hong Kong. Well, who would have guessed, right? Not so surprising, but there you go. And it became hard on the industry, right? So those 2 guys, the owners of that business, they've struggled massively. And they've really been through the ringer. But the industry as a whole has also had to adapt massively. The investors who were looking at the business, they just ran for cover for a while. They, hang on, we need to see where this ends up, but in the meantime, we're not interested. So, yeah, basically, that whole thing needed to settle down, right? New regulations have come into play. They're not all finalized. At that time, there were 500 self-storage branches in Hong Kong, various operators, and today that's 380. So there's been quite a few that have closed down, that have been forced to close down. Meanwhile, prices have gone up by about 1/3. So the ones that remain, it's an even more profitable business. So the consumer's lost out in this game. But we're still there. We have other people we're engaging now. And we want to relaunch the whole thing. So what happened? You say, let's go back to what happened in Singapore with Singpost. So Singpost bought the business in September 2015. Then they couldn't buy the business in Hong Kong. And then they came to me and said, okay, now we got 2 brands in Singapore, StoreFriendly and Lock & Store. We were going to take and make everything StoreFriendly because then we'd be the biggest in all of Asia and just have 1 brand. But because we can't take Hong Kong, what are we going to do? So then they said, actually, we don't want the brand anymore. And then I said, okay, that's great. So give me back the brand and pay me the royalties, the license fees that you needed to pay. So they had a license fee that they still needed to pay in the meantime while they could take over the whole brand. Since they didn't do that, the license fee just kept running. Now they didn't want to use it, it's okay. So I got the brand back and they paid me to take it back. So that was quite an interesting day that was. So what happened is that now StoreFriendly is 100% controlled by Kevin and I. We signed a non-compete for 2 years. That has expired now. And we're now restarting the venture. So we have a new fund management business that we're starting to secure capital, which will be the asset manager of properties in Singapore and in Hong Kong. So that's called Amicus. So it's a kind of continuation of the friendly theme. So Amicus is the propco, if you will. StoreFriendly is the opco. So we're restarting the whole thing again. We've now secured our first building in Singapore, and we're talking to investors on participating in the whole thing. And so this time we're going to go in big. So now we've learned from the first time. We know how to do it. Now we still have many customers in Hong Kong, and we have an appetite to redo it in Singapore. So we're going to go in and do it again, but now we go in as StoreFriendly 2.0. So now we optimize. Now we go in and do everything in a tech-heavy way. So this will be a new form of self-storage, much more automated execution, tech-heavy, environmentally friendly, tech-heavy sort of approach. And then with a massive marketing budget behind us. And we have some investors who are supporting us in that while we still retain control of the whole venture. So quite excited about that, to be honest.